Hello, Heartful Parent family. It is time for this week's bonus episode of the podcast. These little bonus episodes are my gift to you because, as you've heard me say, inevitably, time and time again, we were never meant to parent alone. And I know that all of us, myself included, have so many questions about parenting. In the work that I do and the many hats that I wear, one of my very favorite things is getting and answering questions from parents and getting to support you, you, on your journey. So each week I'm taking one real question from a listener or a subscriber to my newsletter and I'm diving in. So on that note, here we go with this week's question.
All right, welcome back everyone to the Heartful Parent Podcast. It's Friday. And so it's time for a reader question or a listener question. And this week's question is a good one. And it's, how do we build a whole family strategy? Specifically for dual caregiver situations, how do we choose and implement parenting strategies with both parents on board? And this is such an important question because I think, look, we all know that if you are parenting, with another parent in your home, if you are co-parenting with a partner or a spouse, there are always going to be differences in the way that you parent. And those differences are really based on the way that we were raised, each of us, and on our individual values, as well as our own skill set in terms of emotional regulation. So I think those are really the three key things that come into this: how we were parented, our core values, and our toolbox in terms of emotional regulation and other things. So when it comes to parenting with someone else, there are always going to be challenges that arise. And, I would love to say, look, in an ideal world, you would have these conversations before you have children and you would work it all out. And yes, in an ideal world, there should be some really big, important conversations that happen before we ever get married and certainly before we ever have children with another person. But parenting is one of those things that you can't really know how you're going to parent until you're a parent, right? You can know some things that you might not want to do based on, if you were raised in a household where there was a lot of corporal punishment, a lot of physical spanking or hitting or abuse, and those things can be one and the same. You may know that you don't wish to parent in that way, but how you are going to parent is a different question, right? It's easier to know the negative of what you don't want to do than it is to know what you do want to do or what you will do. A funny story, when I was pregnant with our first daughter, my husband said to me, well, I should back up. We had 2 dogs at the time that my older daughter was born. We always have dogs. We love dogs. Right now we have 3. It is more than any one person needs or any family needs. But right now we have 3. When we got married, the rule was never less than 1, never more than 2. We have violated that rule a few times on the upper limit. But at any rate, we had 2 dogs when we got married. And I was not a great disciplinarian with one of the dogs. She had my number, man, and she was so sweet, and I was her person, and she was my dog. Like, she, to this day, is like, I still miss her. And I would let her up on our bed. I would, let her do all sorts of naughty things that she wasn't supposed to do. And my husband said to me, he was like, you are going to need to figure this out because you are way too lenient and permissive, and you let this dog get away with murder. Like, what is going to happen when that's our children? And I said to him, I was like, dogs are different than kids. Don't you worry. And he was like, we'll see. Fast forward a number of years, and we both giggle about this now because I'm still a softie when it comes to the dogs. When that dog, Dandy, died 5 years ago, it wasn't too long after that we got another dog, Scout. She is now, I know you're not supposed to have favorites. I don't have favorite children, but I do have a favorite dog. And Scout is my favorite. And she gets away with absolute murder in our house. And she sleeps on our bed. And I should know, she's an 85-pound Bernese Mountain Dog. She's not a tiny little like Shih Tzu or whatever. She's a big girl. Not as big as she could be, but she's big. And I let her sleep on the bed, and I will let her lie on top of me and like snuggle with me. She's a really good snuggler. But I am very good with my boundaries with my kids. And what makes us giggle is that my husband is the one who struggles with permissiveness. He tends towards that style of parenting. And so, he's like, I know, I thought you were going to be the total pushover and you're not. And it turns out it's me. So at any rate, you can talk about these things before you get married, but you don't really know what it's going to look like until you do get married. So if you are parenting with a partner, whether they are in your home or they're, not in your home, but there's somebody that you can effectively co-parent with, I highly recommend doing a few things to really bolster your own communication with one another and to make sure that you've kind of cleared the closet, if you will, of any sort of leftover skeletons from the way that you were raised, so that you've done the work yourself and that your partner has done the work themselves. Now, I am not a therapist. I am not a trained therapist. I'm not a licensed therapist. I am a coach, and I take a coaching approach to the work that I do. But I do think that our relationships influence heavily our parenting. And so inside the Heartful Parent Academy, I created an entire module on heartful partnering. And it's based on my training with the Gottman Institute, and it's based on my training with the Positive Discipline Association and their program that applies positive discipline to relationships called How to Keep the Joy in Relationships. And it's also based on my training as a certified fair play facilitator. So, there's a lot of content in there that I think is really important when we're having challenges in our parenting. And we're not going to work this out in the middle of a fight. We're not going to work this out in front of our kids. We're going to dive into this work with our partners. That's the best, the healthiest way to do this. And to think about our own communication styles, to think about, the way that we were parented and the legacy that we want to leave, which is actually a separate module inside the academy where you get to really think through that and build a common dream with your partner. It's also something that I do with my one-on-one clients, because if we can build a dream of what we want with our partners in all the different areas of our lives and what we want for our children when they leave the nest and go out into the world, then we can start to figure out the strategies to get us there, right? With a common vision, the roadmap gets a lot easier to create. So that's really the recommendation that I make in this arena, is to sit down, to do the work, to think about your own communication styles, to build a dream together. And then once you've built that dream and you've set up a structure for really healthy communication between partners, I call them partner meetings. They really mimic the structure of a family meeting, which many of you have heard me talk about. But having these partner meetings once a week and, really focusing on looking at that dream and how we're moving towards that dream is super, super effective. And then once you've figured that out, once you know the end point that you want to get to, where you want to land 20 years from now as a parent, as a partner, as a professional, as a friend, et cetera, then you can start to map out how to get there. So when we look at the end goal, for example, we want to have kids who are really self-motivated, and we look at the research that tells us how to get there, which, side note, nearly everything in the Heartful Parent Academy is research-based. Then we can figure out the strategies to do that. And what the research says, and you've probably heard me say this before, is that chores and family work help raise motivated kids, self-motivated, self-actualizing kids. And so if we know that, then as partners, we can make a decision about how we're going to implement the requirement that our kids do chores and participate in the work of the family. We can figure that out together, and we can approach that in a common way. If we are able to know, that we want kids with good self-regulation techniques, good self-management, who are able to stay calm under pressure, then we know we want to teach them those skills, which might mean we need to learn them, that we each need to work on those together and to support each other in that. So again, once we know the destination, it helps us create the roadmap to get there. And that is something that should be talked about, worked on, facilitated in regular meetings with our partners. So that's a really short answer. Once again, I know you have heard me say this before, but that's what the Heartful Parent Academy is for, is to help provide you, yes, you, with content that can support that journey. So there's content on how to create that vision, and then how to, sort of work through our own parenting challenges and our challenges as a couple to arrive at a place where we are truly parenting as partners. All right, I hope that helps. Happy Friday. I'll see you back next week. Cheers.
All right, listeners, thanks so much for coming along with me for this week's bonus episode. If you would like your question answered, drop me an email at Christy@theheartfulparent.com. I'd love to hear from you. You can also go to my website at theheartfulparent.com and sign up for my newsletter, where you receive the inside scoop on everything Heartful Parent, and it's delivered weekly to your inbox. Better yet, if you would like more answers to the parenting questions challenging you, and/or you would just like to support my work here at the Heartful Parent, there is no better way to do that than to join the Heartful Parent Academy. Inside the Academy, you get direct access to me, to get all your questions answered at least 3 times a month. And the more members, the more access I will offer. So use coupon code PODCAST to try out your first month for only $7. You can find the join link on my website. I feel so incredibly grateful that you let me into your lives every week and now twice a week. And I'm also so grateful to those who support the work that I'm doing. I truly cannot do this without you. Thanks so much. Cheers, everyone. I will see you next week.